Mules for Sister Sara wasn't just a Western. It was a politically charged war film shot on the edge of a real conflict zone, a tense story of survival built on a script by a man Hollywood had tried to destroy. Behind the sun-baked Mexican landscapes and the unlikely alliance lay a production so fraught with ideological conflict, on-set tension, and historical baggage that it's a miracle it ever got made. What audiences saw as a rugged adventure was, in reality, a film at war with itself, a product of a turbulent era where the Old West was being used to fight the culture wars of the 1970s. Today, we're uncovering the uncomfortable truths behind this seemingly classic adventure. Here are 20 weird facts about Two Mules for Sister Sara, and stick around for a bonus fact about the film's title that reveals a darker, more cynical truth. Hit that subscribe button and head south with us. Number 20. The script was by a blacklisted writer. The film's script wasn't just written by a Hollywood scribe. It was penned by a man the industry had exiled. The screenwriter, Albert Maltz, was one of the infamous Hollywood 10, a group of screenwriters and directors who were jailed and blacklisted in the 1940s for refusing to answer questions about their alleged ties to the Communist Party. Maltz wrote the script for Two Mules for Sister Sara under the pseudonym John B. Long, as confirmed by the film's full writing credits on IMDb. It was only years later that his true authorship was revealed. What makes this so shocking is that a mainstream, star-driven war film was built on the foundation of a blacklisted writer's work, a man who had been systematically persecuted and had his career destroyed by the very system that now profited from his words. The film wasn't just entertainment. It was a quiet, posthumous victory for a writer who had been silenced, his words finding a voice back in Hollywood through the most unlikely of vehicles. Number 19. Eastwood and MacLaine's ideological warfare. The on-screen chemistry wasn't just acting. It was a fragile truce in a real-life ideological Cold War. Clint Eastwood, a conservative icon, and Shirley MacLaine, a staunch liberal and outspoken feminist, were on a collision course from day one. MacLaine was constantly critical of the film's script, which she felt treated the threat of sexual assault too lightly in the context of a brutal war. She fought for her character to have more agency and for the film's tone to be tempered with a sense of real danger. Eastwood, protective of his macho persona and the film's adventurous spirit, often pushed back. Their arguments weren't just about character motivation, they were a microcosm of the broader political battles raging in America. The set wasn't just a movie set, it was a battleground for the soul of the 1970s, with every line of dialogue a potential political statement. Number 18. The director was caught in the crossfire. Director Don Siegel, a veteran filmmaker and frequent Eastwood collaborator, wasn't just a captain of his ship. He was a mediator caught between two unstoppable forces. Siegel, known for tough, gritty films like Dirty Harry, wanted to make a realistic war adventure, but the studio and Eastwood were pushing for a more audience-pleasing tone. He found himself constantly trying to balance MacLaine's demands for a more serious, feminist-leaning character with Eastwood's desire for a more traditional, charming rogue. The pressure was immense, and Siegel later expressed frustration that the film's tone was often uneven, a direct result of the on-set tug-of-war. The director wasn't just a creative visionary, he was a UN peacekeeper trying to prevent a cinematic war from breaking out, all while trying to deliver a hit movie for a nervous studio. Number 17. The film's treatment of sexual assault was controversial. Even in 1970, the film's central premise, playing the constant threat of sexual violence for moments of tension, was a source of major on-set conflict. Shirley MacLaine was deeply uncomfortable with scenes where her character, disguised as a nun, is menaced by French soldiers and bandits who want to rape her. She argued that the film's adventurous tone trivialized a very real and brutal act of war. The studio, however, saw it as standard fare for an adventure film of its era. This conflict created a fundamental disconnect at the heart of the production. What makes this so dark is that the film asks the audience to root for the heroes in situations where the female lead is under constant threat of sexual violence. The tension wasn't just edgy, it was a product of a bygone era's casual misogyny, a fact that makes watching the film today an often unsettling and problematic experience. Number 16. Filming in a real war zone. The production didn't just film on location in Mexico, it filmed in a region that was a real, active conflict zone. The movie was shot in the state of Durango, Mexico, at a time when the area was experiencing significant unrest and violence from drug cartels and rebel groups. The Mexican government provided a detachment of soldiers to protect the cast and crew, but the danger was ever present. There were numerous reports of the production being stopped by armed men, and the cast and crew lived under a constant state of alert. The film's fictional journey through a war-torn landscape was mirrored by the real-life risks taken by the filmmakers. The set wasn't just a set, it was an armed camp. A Hollywood production operating in a state of siege, where the line between movie magic and real-world violence was terrifyingly thin. Number 15. Shirley MacLaine's disguise was a prison. The iconic nun's habit wasn't just a costume, it was a tool of real-life oppression. Shirley MacLaine has spoken about how wearing the heavy, restrictive habit for months in the sweltering Mexican heat was a physically and psychologically grueling experience. It was hot, itchy, and limited her vision and movement. But more than that, she felt it created a real psychological distance between her and the rest of the cast. They saw her as Sister Sara, not as Shirley, which she found isolating. The costume wasn't just a piece of clothing, it was a physical manifestation of her character's confinement, a barrier that blurred the lines between the performance and the reality of the shoot, making her feel as trapped and misunderstood as the character she was portraying. Number 14. The French soldiers were not French. The film's antagonists, the French soldiers, weren't played by French actors. They were almost entirely portrayed by Mexican actors, many of whom did not speak French fluently, as seen in the film's full cast list on IMDb. Their dialogue was often phonetically learned and heavily accented. This creates a strange, almost surreal layer to the film. What makes this so darkly ironic is that a film set during the French intervention in Mexico features French soldiers who are about as French as a taco. The decision was likely a practical one. Hiring local Mexican actors was cheaper and easier, but it adds to the film's slightly off-kilter tone, turning the historical conflict into a generic foreign enemy that feels detached from any specific reality. Number 13. Eastwood's contractual disputes. Clint Eastwood wasn't just the star, he was a powerful producer who was fighting his own war with the studio, Universal. Two Mules for Sister Sara was one of the films made during the period when Eastwood was trying to get out of his long-term contract with Universal, which he felt was underpaying him and limiting his creative control. He was involved in a series of bitter legal and financial battles with the studio's executives at the time. This off-screen tension undoubtedly bled onto the set. Eastwood wasn't just a happy-go-lucky cowboy, he was a savvy businessman fighting for his future, and his mood and demeanor were undoubtedly affected by the high-stakes corporate drama playing out behind the scenes. The film wasn't just a creative project, it was a chess move in Eastwood's larger game for independence and power in Hollywood. Number 12. The film's feminist twist was a gimmick. The film's big reveal, that Sister Sara is not a nun but a prostitute posing as one for protection, wasn't just a plot twist. It was a cynical marketing gimmick. The entire premise was built on the titillating idea of what's under the habit. The marketing campaign played up the suggestive nature of the premise, promising a risque peek behind the veil of piety. What makes this so dark is that the film uses female empowerment as a setup for a plot device. Sarah's decision to use the nun's habit as a disguise is a clever act of survival in a war zone, but the film treats it more as a bait and switch. A way to tease the audience with the idea of a bad girl pretending to be a good girl. The empowerment wasn't just skin deep, it was a commercial hook, a way to sell tickets by exploiting the very tropes the film pretended to subvert. Number 11. Ennio Morricone's score was written unseen. The film's iconic score by the legendary Ennio Morricone wasn't written to picture. In a highly unusual move, Morricone composed the entire score based solely on his reading of Albert Maltz's script, without seeing any of the finished footage. He trusted his own interpretation of the story's blend of adventure, war, and romance. This is why the score has such a strong, independent identity, often feeling like it's commenting on the action from a slightly different, more magical plane. The music wasn't just an accompaniment, it was a parallel narrative, a preemptive artistic statement that guided the film's tone as much as the director or the actors. It was a leap of faith that paid off, creating one of the most memorable and beloved scores of Morricone's career. Let's pause, go ahead and like and subscribe because the next 10 facts reveal even more about the film's troubled production, from its historical inaccuracies to the secret life of its two mules. Number 10. The film whitewashed history. Two Mules for Sister Sara is set during the French intervention in Mexico, 1861 to 1867, but it plays fast and loose with the historical facts. The film portrays the French as bumbling, almost cartoonish villains and the Mexican Juaristas as universally noble and heroic. The reality was far more complex and brutal. The French, under Napoleon III, were a formidable military force, and the conflict was a bloody, devastating war that cost hundreds of thousands of lives. The film's simplistic good versus evil narrative was a deliberate choice to make the story more accessible and adventurous for American audiences. The history wasn't just a backdrop, it was a casualty of the entertainment, a complex political and military conflict sanitized and simplified into a simple Western shoot-'em-up. Number 9. The mules were the real stars. The film's two mules weren't just props, they were highly trained and difficult animal actors that required constant attention. Clint Eastwood, a seasoned horseman, developed a surprising rapport with the mules, but they were notoriously stubborn and unpredictable on set. There were numerous instances where the mules would refuse to follow directions, blocking shots and causing delays. The animal wranglers were kept constantly busy trying to keep the animals calm and on task. What makes this so darkly amusing is that these two stubborn, uncooperative animals often upstaged the film's human stars. The mules weren't just a title. They were the co-stars who, true to their nature, refused to be tamed, creating moments of unscripted frustration that perfectly matched the film's gritty tone. Number 8. Shirley MacLaine stunt doubles were forbidden. Due to the film's grueling location shoot and the physical demands of her role, Shirley MacLaine needed a stunt double for certain scenes. However, the production's insurance company, wary of the risks, placed strict limitations on what the double was allowed to do. For scenes involving riding, falling, or any perceived danger, the double was often forbidden, forcing MacLaine to perform many of her own stunts. This included a difficult scene where she has to slide down a muddy embankment. The insurance wasn't just a safety net, it was a set of rules that ironically put the star in more danger. The production's caution created a situation where the actress, not the trained professional, had to perform the risky actions, a paradox that added to the tension and difficulty of the shoot. Number 7. The film's ending was forced and unhappy. The film's final, romantic ending, where Hogan and Sara ride off together into the sunset, wasn't the original conclusion. Early drafts of the script had a more ambiguous and bittersweet ending, where the two part ways after their mission is over. However, the studio, Universal, demanded a conventional, happy ending. They believed that audiences wouldn't accept a story where the male and female leads didn't end up together. This forced change undermines the film's central premise of two independent, cynical souls finding a momentary alliance in a time of war. The ending wasn't just a creative choice. It was a commercial mandate, a tacked-on Hollywood conclusion that betrays the film's more cynical, individualistic spirit in favor of a safe, romantic payoff. Number 6. Clint Eastwood's singing was real. In one of the film's most memorable scenes, Clint Eastwood's character, Hogan, sings "Buckle Down, Winsaki" while shaving. What many viewers don't realize is that is Eastwood's own singing voice. While not a trained singer, Eastwood had a passable singing voice and had performed on screen before, most notably in Paint Your Wagon. He performed the song live on set, and his slightly off-key, everyman rendition adds to the character's charm. The moment wasn't just a piece of acting, it was a glimpse of the real Clint Eastwood, a rare moment where the stoic star lets down his guard and reveals a more vulnerable, unpolished side of himself. It's a small detail, but it's one of the most authentic and endearing moments in the entire film. Number 5. The original Sara was a different star. Before Shirley MacLaine was cast, the role of Sister Sara was offered to another major Hollywood star, Jane Fonda. Fonda, at the time, was a major sex symbol and a rising dramatic actress. Her involvement would have radically changed the film's dynamic. Fonda was also a passionate political activist, and her pairing with Eastwood would have created an even more intense ideological clash than the one with MacLaine. However, Fonda turned down the role, for reasons that have never been fully disclosed. The casting wasn't just a choice, it was a crossroads. Had Fonda accepted, Two Mules for Sister Sara would have been an entirely different film, a potentially darker, more politically charged affair with two even more combustible stars at its center. Number 4. The film's budget spiraled out of control. What started as a relatively modest Western adventure quickly became an expensive production. The decision to film on location in Mexico, combined with the high salaries of Eastwood and MacLaine and the need for extensive military extras and period costumes, caused the budget to spiral to over $4 million, a significant sum in 1970. The studio grew increasingly nervous as expenses mounted, especially given the on-set tensions and the film's controversial subject matter. The production wasn't just a creative endeavor, it was a financial gamble that was getting riskier by the day. The pressure to deliver a massive hit to justify the budget was immense, and this financial anxiety undoubtedly contributed to the studio's interference in the film's tone and ending. Number 3. The film was a hobby project for Eastwood. For Clint Eastwood, Two Mules for Sister Sara wasn't just another job. It was a project born out of his personal interests. Eastwood was a passionate collector of Western memorabilia and a student of the Old West. He was particularly fascinated by the French intervention in Mexico, the historical setting for the film. He saw the project as an opportunity to explore this lesser-known chapter of Western history. This personal investment is one of the reasons he fought so hard for the film, even as he battled the studio over his contract. The film wasn't just a paycheck. It was a passion project, a chance for Eastwood to indulge his historical curiosity and bring a piece of his beloved Old West to life, even if the final product was a compromised version of his vision. Number 2. The film damaged the Eastwood-Siegel partnership. Two Mules for Sister Sara marked the beginning of the end of one of the great actor-director collaborations in Hollywood history. Clint Eastwood and Don Siegel had made brilliant films together like Coogan's Bluff and Dirty Harry. However, the creative tensions and on-set conflicts during Sara left a bad taste in both men's mouths. Siegel felt Eastwood was becoming too powerful and too focused on his own star persona, while Eastwood felt Siegel was resistant to the more adventurous, commercial direction he wanted to take. While they would work together again on Escape from Alcatraz, their professional relationship was never the same. The film wasn't just a movie, it was the turning point, the film where the creative partnership began to fray, a casualty of the very clashing egos and ideologies that defined its production. Number 1. The film is a cynical anti-war statement. Beneath its adventurous exterior, Two Mules for Sister Sara is a deeply cynical and anti-war film. Both protagonists are mercenaries who are motivated not by patriotism or ideology, but by pure self-interest. Hogan helps the Waristas not because he believes in their cause, but because he's attracted to Sara and hopes for a reward. Sara helps the Waristas not out of faith, but for revenge against the French who killed her father. The film portrays all forms of organized violence, the French army, the Mexican rebels, the bandits, as equally corrupt and absurd. There are no heroes, only survivors. The film wasn't just a Western adventure. It was a veiled critique of the Vietnam War, a statement that in any conflict, the only rational motivation is to look out for number 1. It's a dark, pessimistic worldview hidden beneath a layer of Hollywood star power. Bonus fact: the title refers to something darker. The film's title, Two Mules for Sister Sara, seems quaint, but it has a much darker, more cynical origin. In the original script by Albert Maltz, the title was a direct reference to a crude, sexist joke. The two mules were not just the animals. They were a metaphor for Hogan and Sara herself, whom the French soldiers colloquially referred to as a mule in a derogatory sense. The title was a piece of period-appropriate slang that reduced the female lead to the level of a pack animal. While the film sanitizes this meaning, the dark, cynical undertone remains. The title wasn't just a catchy phrase, it was a leftover from a rougher, more cynical draft, a subtle hint of the film's less than enlightened view of its female protagonist, a dirty joke hidden in plain sight. Two Mules for Sister Sara remains a strange and fascinating artifact of its time. It's a film that wants to have it both ways, to be a gritty war adventure and a cynical anti-war statement, to be a story of female empowerment and a classic adventure starring a masculine icon. It fails, often spectacularly, to reconcile these contradictions, but in its failure, it reveals the cultural and political battles of its era. It's a film built on compromises, from the blacklisted writer's pseudonym to the studio-mandated happy ending. Yet, for all its flaws, it remains an incredibly entertaining and watchable film, a testament to the immense star power of its leads and the craft of its director. It is, in the end, a perfect product of its time, a flawed, compromised, and deeply interesting mess. Like and subscribe for more behind-the-scenes revelations that change how you see your favorite movies forever. In the words of Hogan, you know, you're not a very good nun. And in many ways, this wasn't a very good film, but it was a fascinating one,